So let's start with, we're here with 3,000 of our closest friends, trying to sort of puzzle out how to make the workplace more human, more engaging for people. In your work and in your experience in talking with people, what are you seeing as kind of the biggest obstacle or challenge that we're facing right now to fully engaging employees?
Yeah, well, I don't think it's an easy answer that there's just one thing, that if we got this magic bullet, then it would be all fine. I think it's multi-layered and a lot of different challenges that come up. I think one is, if you look at the global marketplace, if you look at how quickly change is happening, and we hear a lot about agile workforces and making changes around agility, I think that constant change can be difficult. And how do you go about communicating that out to the organization? How do we help the leaders to be able to help the individuals that are going through the change? So I think that is having a huge piece. It can be difficult for the employee engagement, but it's not just about what's happening with the change, it's the layers around how are the leaders supporting the individuals around all of this change that's happening. And that's where it gets to, and I'm a big believer, and I think you are as well, when it comes to employee engagement, part of it is around how equipping your leaders to be able to be really good leaders and to be able to support and create a humanized work environment where people can bring their whole people. They're messy, there's messiness that comes in the workplace. So I think that's one piece. I think the other is around culture, and I'm happy to see there are changes happening around really understanding, like, what does it mean to have these values and live and breathe the values. But what I find a little bit frustrating from my experience from the HR consulting perspective and even the executive coaching perspective, especially with the senior leadership team, is there's these set of values, and it's great, but in terms of living and breathing the values, the leaders in the organization, a lot of them are not doing it. So it's an exercise, right? It's a checking off the box exercise, and that's not going to create an environment. It creates even more demoralizing from an engagement perspective if you're going around talking about these values, and you have these people who are not living, breathing the values, and no accountability.
It's like you've documented your integrity breach for everyone to see. Kind of, it's a really strange thing. So I want to go back to it connects back to that. But you said as one of the issues is we need leaders who can lead in a way that engages people.
Yes.
And what does that look like? What are the qualities or behaviors that you try to coach or teach in a leader that does that?
Yeah, really good question. And I think one thing is it's not an either or. Like, we hear a lot about the whole masculine and feminine energy, and so I am a big proponent in terms of the soft skills, having more emotional intelligence, so having the empathy, having the compassion, really creating that space for individuals learning how to coach. I mean, it's so important for leaders to know how to coach and mentor. And also some of the other skills are still important. It's not just having the soft skills and not having the other piece. But I think that a lot of leaders, you see the individual contributors that go into leadership positions, and then they get into it. Nobody's giving them any training, no mentoring, no coaching, supporting them on this huge change in terms of a transition. And they don't have, they haven't learned those skills. Like, it's so a big, huge part of their job is the people component, the people interaction. And I know in your session you were talking about the whole one-on-one. And it's interesting when the leaders have so much on their plate, right? They're going from meeting to meeting to meeting.
Right.
And then someone's saying to them, oh, and by the way, you need to do one-on-one sessions.
Right.
It can feel like, well, how am I supposed to do that? I don't have the time. But it's helping them to understand it, which feels counterintuitive. When you actually make the time and have the one-on-ones and are proactive in that way, so much of the drama and the issues and the challenges that you're facing, they won't be the same because you're being proactive with the one-on-one conversations, right? So you're preventing that from happening. But when you're in the trenches, when you're feeling burnt out and overwhelmed, and I mean, don't even get me started on meetings, because I think that's a whole, there's not even space, right? But when you're constantly running around like that, it can feel really counterintuitive. But then when they actually start doing it, and I've experienced this with a lot of my clients with the executive coaching, when they start to actually put it in place, make it a priority, they start to notice like, wow, like it's feeling different. There's a different rhythm. Things are actually more productive. They're building more trust. Right. They're building more trust with their employees as well, because the one-on-one's is also about them asking their team, what do you need more of from me? Right. How can I better support you? And it's about having that kind of dialogue and having the two-way feedback.
So when you're working with a client, whether it's a leader or an HR group, what are kind of your most effective pieces of advice to them around how to improve or tackle employee engagement to sort of improve, create a more engaging experience for their employees?
I think the biggest thing is not feeling, they can feel overwhelmed because they have to do everything, and don't feel like you need to do everything. Take baby steps. Every small action is going to have an impact, right? So if they're doing nothing, just starting with even having one-on-ones and starting to equip leaders or have training available to them. Maybe that's about, from an employee engagement perspective, what are they doing also to support the employees? Because I'm also a believer that it's not just the leaders. The individual need to be empowered as well. So what are they doing to help themselves learn that? So from a tactical perspective, it could be all of a sudden starting to do, I think exit interviews, I'm also a big proponent of stay interviews, sure. Right? So asking in the first 90 days, what's going well, what's not going well, what could we do to get even better? Right. I'm trying to remember who was talking about that. Was it Kat Cole that was talking about, constantly getting that feedback and asking if there's one thing that we could change, what would it be that we could sure. change as a business? So constantly getting that feedback and then making changes. Employee engagement surveys where you're asking questions, I think those have to be done properly, that the right questions are asked and that there's high trust. Right. Because I've seen too many times where they're not actually getting accurate results right. in the employee right. engagement. So then it's like, okay, great, like they're not actually being honest, yeah. So yeah. What's the point? Same thing even with 360 surveys. Like if there's not psychological safety and an environment of trust, you're not going to get. So the best is to have those one-on-one conversations and ask people, what do we need more of to be to make this a workplace that you're happy to go to work. And then I'm such a big proponent of the baby steps. Like don't try to do it all at once. That feels overwhelming. But start with those different actions. And I don't think there's a one size that fits all. I think each organization, where they're seeing the challenges, it'll look different.
Okay. So I'm handing you a magic wand right now, and you can use that magic wand to eradicate one management practice mm-hmm. or dogma or approach or whatever fad out of existence. You can make it go away. Which one do you pick?
Make it go away. I can think of things that I want to happen.
So start there. Give me that first, and then I'll have you think.
Okay, yes. I feel like I always go to leadership because I think it just has such a huge impact, and helping leaders understand it starts with you first. Like until you really know yourself, understand your strength, understand your blind spots, get feedback from everyone. Until you really understand yourself, you're not going to be able to be as effective at leading and managing and getting the potential and developing the people around you. Right. So I guess what I would want less of, if I'm taking it from that perspective, less ego. I see too much ego in organizations, sure. And we see this in the political landscape right now. I'm not going to get into that, but so I would love to see a lot less ego and helping people lead. I'm going to use the word love and heart, right? Leading more from the hearts. But in order to do that, a lot of times it takes some self-work and helping people to understand themselves better to make that happen. Yeah. So I really love that question, and I'm going to take anything out, I'm going to say less ego.
Less ego. I love it. Well, and it reminds me of, I don't even know where it first came from, that you can't fully sort of love someone else until you love yourself first. And it reminds me of that.
Yes. Yes.
Awesome. So give us a soundbite, a quick kind of bit of advice for a manager who is sitting there thinking, man, I really want to improve the engagement of my team. Give us something like that they could apply tomorrow or next week to instantly have a positive impact on their team.
I'm going to say twofold. Is first, ask for help. Get support. I find a lot of leaders that can feel lonely out there and they're not getting the support. So find a mentor, find a coach, talk about what they're experiencing, talk about what you're experiencing so they can make changes in that way. The other piece is start to have one-on-one conversations with everybody on your team and get to know that human being in front of you, because it has a huge impact, and it's all about the relationship. So the more you go out there and start to get to know the human beings in front of you, the more effective you're going to be able to be as a leader.